no matter how you project your image, you have a responsibility to project a good image. And that goes for social media as well. I know people can do a lot of damage to a company by writing up things across the net about how good or bad your company is. Well, you got to do your best to resurrect those differences if you have with a client or a customer or a vendor, because they can, in one blast, give you a bad rap.
Welcome to Grow Think Tank. This is the one and only place where you will get insight from the founders and the CEOs of the fastest growing privately held companies. I am the host. My name is Gene Hammett. I help leaders and their teams navigate the defining moments of their growth. Are you ready to grow?
Growing a business takes a lot of fortitude and grit. Today we're going to talk about growing a billion-dollar business. Well, more than $1 billion. How about over $30 billion? What does it take to be the kind of leader that over many decades aligns people together, hires thousands of people, gets all of the operations right, gets the sales right, and builds over $30 billion organization? Well, we're going to be talking with the founder of Paychex. Paychex is the brand that you've heard of about processing payroll and 401k and many other aspects of this central organization inside of many, many businesses. They are a brand to be reckoned with in this space. We have Tom Golisano on the podcast today. Tom is the founder of that organization, as I've already said, but he's written a book called Built Not Born. And I had a chance to read this book, and I wanted to share with you some of the thoughts I had through this interview. It's really amazing to be able to reach out to people and bring them on the show just for you as founders of fast growth companies that are emerging into great leaders, being visionary. And one of the things we talk about in here is what you should be doing with your time as a CEO and why you should be the laziest person out there. So when I talked to Tom today, I took a look through the book and I really was able to pull out some nuggets and some questions that will help you. But I will tell you, this book really is a powerful read. It will give you some insights around strategy that will help you grow. It really complements some of the work I do because I work on the mental aspects of being a confident and courageous leader. And so having Tom on the show is a really good kind of complement to the work I do. So I wanted to remind you that if you want to be the leader that you really want to be, you must continue to be even more courageous and more confident about who you are and how you're showing up. That's the key of my work. Now here's the interview with Tom. Before we dive into the interview, I wanted to remind you that you can actually get a tool that I've been working with clients with for the last couple of years. I've refined this tool that's gone through several iterations. Now we have it completely automated. You can actually go online and fill out the leadership quiz. To get the leadership quiz, just go to theleadershipquiz.com. That's pretty easy, right? Theleadershipquiz.com. What you will get when you do that is you will answer a few questions. You will see where you rate based on the core principles of fast growth companies. If you're ready to grow your company or you want to see where you are, then make sure you go to theleadershipquiz.com. Inside it, you will get insight to where you are, understand where you want to improve, and you will get them mapped into the 10 areas that are most specific to fast growth companies. Again, go to theleadershipquiz.com and you can get that right now. Hey, Tom, how are you?
I'm doing well, Gene. How are you doing?
I am fantastic. I've already introduced you to our audience and I told them a little bit about your background, but we're going to dive into it today. You were a founder of a publicly traded company called Paychex. Tell us about some of the key milestones in your journey to get to where you are today.
Sure. I started Paychex back in 1971 in Rochester, New York. I had a goal of getting 400 clients in the city of Rochester and living happily ever after. But after being in business a few years, a couple of individuals came to me who wanted to start up similar locations or similar companies in other locations across the country. So I went through a 4-year period where I helped 17 different individuals start Paychex offices in other parts of the country. Most of them, except for one of them, lived in Rochester, New York, and moved. We did that for a number of years, and then the concept of consolidating into one company became a reality. I sent out a prospectus to all 17 individuals and said, we should consolidate into one company. I know I tried to talk you into becoming entrepreneurs, but now I'm asking you to be an employee and a shareholder. But we had a strategy in place, and that was after consolidation, we would work 3 years on building a sales organization and more branch offices. We did that, then we focused on profitability. 1983, we went public on the NASDAQ exchange. E.F. Hutton and Hambrecht and Quist did our IPO. At that time, we had about 25,000 clients. Today, Paychex is now serves over 670,000 companies in the United States. We also have a wide array of, besides payroll processing, of human resource products, like 401k administration, workers' compensation insurance, and that type of thing. The company, of course, is still public. It has a market cap of somewhere between 31 and $32 billion. We have thousands of shareholders, of course, and we have over 15,000 employees.
Well, that's a big run there. I do want to kind of highlight that in the middle of that. Do you remember the year you became a billionaire?
It wasn't when we went public. Wasn't probably until 1993 or 94, something like that.
So you had to get
Let me tell you what happened in the 90s. We had a period of time where our revenue never grew less than 17%, and our profitability growth was never less than 30%, all through the 90s. And that's when the company really blossomed into a much higher market cap. Before that, we were generally under 100 million. But when we went through that period, and we also did 10 3-for-2 stock splits, which don't seem to be in favor these days. People aren't doing stock splits, but we did 10 3-for-2s during the 90s.
Awesome. Well, I wanted you to be on the show because not only have you had just an amazing journey of entrepreneurship and leadership, but you've learned a few things, mostly because you've probably been through ups and downs. You've made mistakes. You've had regrets. I know you've written about this in the book, Built, Not Born. I would hold it up here, but we're not on video here today. Tell me a little bit about why you had to write this book.
Well, it started out, a lot of people encouraged me to write a biography. And I thought that was an interesting idea. I did about half of it and started talking to publishers. And publishers gave me feedback back saying, Tom, why don't you write a business book first? Okay, tell the story of Paychex and all the other things you've been involved in, like the Buffalo Sabres, philanthropy, and stuff like that. And I said, maybe that's a good idea. And while I was on the phone with one of the publishers, I actually wrote the table of contents, the 10 or 12 important chapter titles, because it came so easy to me. And, I may sound like I'm a little bragging there, but it did come easy to me. So that's how the book evolved. And what I want it to be is something for entrepreneurs. And I know most of your people are entrepreneurs, but for people who are also considering it, some of the hills and valleys, some of the things that they need to be concerned about, such as financing, HR administration, and also one interesting chapter, how to handle success, which I think sometimes can be a real problem with an entrepreneur.
Well, it can be, because the title of my book, The Trap of Success. I didn't handle it very well, and I wrote a story about losing everything and rebuilding my life.
I read it.
And I appreciate that. Well, today's about you. So I want to dive into this. This is a really big question because you've had so many people that you've had to lead over time, but you actually have some ideas about time as a CEO. How can leaders have the time and capacity to become really good leaders?
I think the prime issue with becoming a good leader is being able to delegate. The leader has to think. The leader has to visualize. The leader has to think about overall his product offerings, his pricing, and those types of things. And if he gets caught up in day-to-day activity, those things will get set aside and will not happen. So being able to delegate effectively is very, very important.
I know you talk about the power of vision inside of being that CEO. When you think about it, what is the real issue with people not being the visionary leaders that they need to be?
Well, I think, unfortunately, they just get caught up in the day-to-day, and they don't take the time to be visionary or think about their future as it relates to their company. So it's just a matter of, you got to set all that paperwork, all that stuff on the desk aside, or not let it get to your desk, let other people handle it, and focus on the vision of the company and where you want to take it.
Hold on for a second here. Tom just talked about not taking time. Now, when you think about your own business, I know you're busy. You have a lot of projects on your mind. You have a lot of things in your to-do list. But don't hide behind your email. Don't hide behind the trivial tasks that are necessary. All of those things could be delegated when you really understand the value of you as the CEO. Now, I say this because I know a lot of people struggle with letting go. They want to hold on to this because they're really good at it. Maybe they like doing it. But some of those tasks are keeping you from being the CEO that you really need to be, the visionary, the strategic thinker of the organization that allow you to connect the dots and push beyond where you are today. This is a big part of the work I do with leaders to get them really clear and confident about who they are as leaders. So make sure you reach out to me if you have any questions. Now back to Tom. You wrote about this in the book, so I'm going to give you a chance to talk about it. But why should CEOs be the least busy of all the managers and leaders inside the organization?
Well, when I say least busy, I'm talking about, odds and ends, paper stuff, reading contracts, all those types of things that take up a lot of time, but aren't very productive. And it's easy to get caught into that trap because people are always coming into your office and saying, what do I do about this? What do I do about that? Well, you got to get by that stuff. You got to do what you can to make sure your people under you are taking leadership positions themselves, and they should be good delegators as well.
You have a complete chapter on the public image of the organization. So let's just ask, a few questions. Why is it important to really project the right public image as the company is being built from the beginning all the way through every stage of the process?
Well, I'm a little bit biased because we are a payroll processing company, and we get very close to the entrepreneurs because we know all about their payroll, how much everybody's being paid in the organization and so forth. So I think it's very, very important for a company like ours to have a good public image. We want to have an image of honesty and integrity, accuracy. Those things are so important for a payroll processing company. And I think there's many ways to accomplish it. One is, and I took a lot of heat over the years, was our dress code. When you come to the Paychex offices, you'd be surprised how neat and organized they appear. And I'll give you a wicked example. Some nights I would go through the building, and if I saw all kinds of papers on somebody's desk, I'd just swoop them into the wastebasket, and everybody by the next morning got the message. We're going to be neat, we're going to be organized, we're going to be professional, and we're going to look professional. It's not only important for clients to see that, but also Wall Street. And because we are a payroll processing company, it's just vital that we have a good public image.
Now, you had some thoughts on social media too. You didn't go into much depth, but what are your thoughts on, the public image through social media today?
Well, I wouldn't say that's one of my strong points, but I'll say no matter how you project your image, you have a responsibility to project a good image. And that goes for social media as well. I know people can do a lot of damage to a company by writing up things across the net about how good or bad your company is. Well, you got to do your best to resurrect those differences if you have with a client or a customer or a vendor, because they can, in one blast, give you a bad rap.
I want to talk about some employee issues now. One of the things I got from the book, and it aligns with my message very well, but you talk about the value of entrepreneurial-minded employees. What exactly is an entrepreneurial-minded employee?
Well, basically what I mean by that is if you're an employee of a company, I would assume that the ownership and the management of the company would want you to be as entrepreneurish as you can. By that, I mean coming up with new concepts, new ideas, ways to become more productive, and so forth. And I think you can do that, and you can encourage that with any employee. Let's say you have an employee, maybe a low-skilled job, who you would say is rated as a 1 on the entrepreneurial scale. Well, you can make that 1 a 3. Or if you got a 3, you can make them a 6, and so on and so forth. And that goes for the entrepreneur himself as well, or herself. So encouraging people to think creatively, to think positively about the organization and how to make it better, is good for everybody.
Now, hold on a second. Entrepreneur-minded employees, you may be resisting that. You may not believe that that's a good idea. But here's the concept that you really should understand. You can't have people who just follow the rules and or do what they're told to do. You actually want people that can see problems in your organization and have the confidence to recognize those problems and to address them, to see the value that is created. If you get them to think like entrepreneurs, they will create more creativity and innovation inside the organization. They will inspire others. So Tom went on to say that you should really be rising the level of the entrepreneur spirit of everyone around you. Not everyone is going to be an entrepreneur that goes out and starts their own business. And that's not so bad either. But you, as a leader, want to inspire them to think like entrepreneurs. Back to Tom. I totally agree with that. And one of the things you talked about there specifically is, getting people to take ownership. So how do you encourage or inspire ownership across employees?
Well, there's one way you could do it at certain levels, and that's, of course, with stock options. Stock options have been utilized in Paychex for a long, long time, and it does encourage people to take ownership. But employees at the non-stock option level, you just have to ingrain in them that we're all in this together, that we have a responsibility to do a better job, a good job, and take responsibility.
And you also mentioned the importance of investing in that. You're a big, supporter of training inside the organization. And in fact, Paychex is known for the constant support and training you gave your employees. So why is it worth investing in employees?
Well, first of all, it makes the employees better. It makes them more skilled at their job. Secondly, we are in a very personal business when it comes to payroll processing. And we want our clients to feel confident that we know what we're doing at all levels. A payroll specialist that deals with a client, one payroll specialist at Paychex may deal with a couple hundred clients. Those 200 clients want to feel comfortable that the person they're dealing with on a daily or weekly basis knows what they're doing, understands what they're doing, can keep them out of trouble with the federal and state government. So we go to long lengths to make sure that our people are as well trained as possible. The other thing it does, we're a very geographically dispersed company. We have probably 11,000 employees spread out across the United States. By bringing them into the central office early in their career with Paychex, it helps build a feeling of belonging and importance in the company. I'll tell you one thing we did, and I'll give the credit to our architect. When we built our corporate headquarters in Rochester, we put our training department right in the front of the building. As you walk in the main entrance of the building, you look around and you see 7 or 8 training rooms. And all these trainees are in from all over the country getting training in their specific jobs. That gives them a feeling of importance and belonging. That's just one of the instruments we use to get people involved in taking ownership of the company.
Love that. I want to switch gears a little bit and talk about interviewing. You had a very counterintuitive kind of process of interviewing, and there's some other elements around that. But let's first talk about this technique called the pregnant pause. So what is it exactly, and how do you use it?
Well, I'm sure you use it in your world, okay? But basically, I'll define the pregnant pause is I'm making a point with you. Either it could be a sales presentation, it could be a negotiation presentation, anything like that. Well, there comes a point when the presenter should just shut up, okay, and wait for a reaction from the person he's presenting to. And chances are that reaction is going to give you some idea of where you stand in this process. It's either going to come up with an objection, and if you're ready to handle the objection. But if you just keep talking and never give that customer the chance or that other person the chance to converse, you're going to just asking for trouble. How many times have you seen a salesperson go in, make a great presentation, and just keep talking and talking and talking, and the customer never has a chance to say yes or no? And if they're ready to say yes, if you keep talking, you might talk yourself right out of the deal. Seen it happen many times.
I've seen it happen too. I read about a story in there where if you're interviewing someone, use this pregnant pause as literally a technique to see how they handle maybe the awkward silence and you're willing to just sit there and let them make the next move, right?
That's exactly right, especially in interviewing. You want the person to talk. You want the person to try to communicate with you. And if you keep talking and don't give that person the opportunity, well, by using the pregnant pause, you're giving them the opportunity. And it's interesting to watch how they handle it. A good candidate will be able to handle it. But sometimes people just walk themselves and talk themselves right into not getting the job.
One last question on interviewing. I know this is an old adage, but not too many leaders really follow it. They really look at, they know that it's important, but then they go the completely other way. But you've always thought that you should hire on attitude and train for skill. What exactly is the reason behind that?
Absolutely. I'm just a believer that it's much easier to teach a skill than it is to teach an attitude. And that phrase, higher attitude over skill, has been sort of my rationale ever since I began hiring people. And when you say attitude, what are you looking for? Well, you're looking for people that are ambitious, that want to accomplish something, have demonstrated they can be a good team player. And those things are all very important, as well as the other thing I probably mentioned in the book. Don't hire the guy that leaves the coffee cup on your desk because he's got poor manners and not going to represent you well. Okay. But those other things are so important. And higher attitude over skill every time.
And there's no real question here, but one of the things I like about the book is you shared some of the details that you go into really seeing how someone treats others, watching for their manners. Do they say thank you? How do they treat people that are, serving them in different ways? You're probably watching that all the time. Is that true?
Sure. Invariably, you'll have somebody come into your office, either a sales rep from another company or a potential employee. We'll sit down, and one thing I will do is ask them if they would like a cup of coffee or a glass of water. And they'll say yes to one or the other. I'll have my assistant bring it in. And if they take the water or the coffee from the assistant, they don't say a word, like not saying thank you or thank you very much. It tells you the person's got just poor manners. And maybe he's too centered on what he's trying to accomplish. But the fact of the matter, it doesn't sit well with me. And then worse, when they leave the coffee cup on my desk, as if it's my responsibility to clean up after them.
Well, I want to switch gears here again because, growing a company to the size that you have, you learned a thing or two about leadership and developing people. You have one key phrase that has really driven that. And this is one of the titles of one of the chapters, but you know what I'm talking about, don't you?
I think I do.
What do you think it is?
All right, you got me.
No, so not trying to trip you up there, but follow or lead, follow or get out of the way. So where does that come from?
Actually, about 40 years ago, Ted Turner, from Broadcasting Company, was interviewed on 60 Minutes, and I saw it on his desk. And I said, boy, when it comes to leadership, nothing made more sense to me. Either you lead or you follow, and if you're not going to do either one, get out of the way. Don't hamper the project. And I've been a firm believer for many, many decades.
Now, you have a phrase on the other side of that sign.
Yes, I do.
Which is, it's all about the presentation.
It's all in the presentation, and that's directed mainly at the sales organization to give good, direct, clear presentations to prospects. But also in anything you're dealing with within the company, and you're making presentations to people, it's all in the presentation. Do a good job of preparing the presentation and delivering the presentation, and you're more likely to get the results you're looking for.
Fantastic. Well, Tom, I want to start to land the plane here, but you've been through so much as a leader. I'd love for you to share with us 2 or 3 defining moments that you've had to wrestle with and cause you to dig deep on your own courage and confidence. What comes to mind?
Well, the first one, I think, one of the defining moments of Paychex was getting by 4 years without a paycheck. I mean, that was not easy. Unfortunately, I had a spouse that worked, albeit for a nonprofit, didn't make a lot of money, but it certainly helped. That was defining for me. The second one I would say is when I talked to the 17 individuals about consolidating into one company, that was a tough sell. I mean, I had convinced these people to move out of Rochester, start up their own operations, be president, have a good fellowship in the community and so forth. And now all of a sudden I'm asking them to be shareholders and employees. That was a real shock to the system. It led to a 4-year period, which was very difficult, quite frankly. I had to put people in charge of other people. In other words, out of the 17, I had to hire 3 people or promote 3 people to be leaders over the other 14. Before, they used to play golf together, and, go out for a drink together and all that kind of thing. Secondly, we didn't have a good situation when it came to skill matching. In other words, these 17 people, some were very good in sales and others were very good in operations, and vice versa. Well, with the setup we had with these 18 separate companies, it just didn't work well. So getting them to consider consolidating into one company was probably the best thing we ever did. And that's when the company became, in my opinion, a serious company. When we consolidated, we had about, 15 or 20,000 clients. Today we have 670,000 clients. The growth started after we consolidated.
Well, I love just talking to you. I think I could do this all day. I had one final question for you is, what do you hope entrepreneurs can learn from your journey of becoming a self-made billionaire?
Well, I hope they can learn as much as they want. I tried to cover as many topics as I could. And you notice the topics are all what I call mechanical. Situations, what do you do in this situation? How you should administer this or administer that. It's very direct, it's very factual. There's very little fluff in the whole thing. And hopefully I support it with enough anecdotes and stories to justify my position. But I hope they keep it on the side of their desk or in their bookshelf. And some days when they're dealing with an issue, maybe they'll pick up the book and say, what did I say about that issue? I just wanted to be a good reference for them. And quite frankly, we've already gotten word from 4 or 5 colleges and universities. They want to use the book as a textbook for their entrepreneurship programs. Very pleased about that. I think it fits well into that environment.
Well, I can tell you, I did not get a chance to read the entire book. So I looked at the table of contents. I looked at some of the things I've struggled with, see how your perspective handled it, what some of my clients struggle with. And I thought it was a really good, unique point of view, but also some time-tested strategies that you could use and implement inside your business and leadership to grow it. You may not be a billionaire.
Well, Gene, what you should do is buy a lot of books for your clients.
Awesome. Well, I love that you had a chance to be here on the podcast. Growth Think Tank is for founders and leaders that are growing fast, and you've really added to the wisdom that we've had here. So thanks for being here, Tom.
Thank you, Gene. It was a pleasure.
Fantastic interview. Having another billionaire on the show really was a pleasure. I love the fact that he was so personable and sharing his insight and wisdom so openly. Hopefully you got something out of it. I know I did. Reading parts of this book have really been helpful for me to understand what does it take to show up at a deeper level and make these really big decisions, and being really clear in your conviction of who you are, because that is Tom. Now, I say that because I know a lot of CEOs struggle with this sense of identity that really have to shift over the term from founder to CEO. I talk about it a lot with the messages we create, a lot of the interviews here about that journey. And today is just another piece in the puzzle of how do you transform yourself from founder to CEO. Now, if you're getting a lot out of this, make sure you share this with people that you think would appreciate it. And if you have any questions for me about your own business, your own growth, make sure you reach out to me, Gene@genehammett.com. As always, lead with courage. We'll see you next time.